Hey there, it's Jordan. Delighted to be joined by Brandy Crawford out of Kalamazoo, Michigan. There is a lot going on in the country, and I think people reacted in horror when they saw the images from East Palestine, Ohio. They saw a rail train explode, controlled explosion, and all sorts of toxic chemicals and gas released into the atmosphere in that part of Ohio, to the point where I'm seeing on Twitter people saying they could smell it 8 to 9 miles away. Yet somehow they were told, "Oh, you could come back," to the residents who they told to evacuate. It's safe now. I bring that up because what if I told you a community in Michigan had toxic chemicals, gas in the air for over a decade? Well, that's what's been going on in Kalamazoo, Michigan. Brandy and I.
Actually, it's been 100 years, according to Graphic Packaging in our lawsuit. They've
Yes,
been telling the news it's been 10 years, but not since the last filing. They said it's okay that we shouldn't have filed our lawsuit against them 100 years ago. And they're allowed to pollute our area because they've been allowed to for 100 years.
I stand corrected. 100 years. Let me just show you so people know what I'm talking about here. These are images just in the last 24 hours. That's coming out of this paper mill, Graphic Packaging. The state of Michigan has known about this for quite some time. You might say, well, Jordan, I see that kind of stuff, when I'm driving to work or this and that, kind of coming out of factories and this and that. You might see it, but you're not supposed to smell it all over the community. And when it starts to make community members sick with all sorts of upper respiratory, lower respiratory, asthmas, cancers, that's a problem. So let's start from the beginning. This has been going on in Kalamazoo for a long time in a predominantly Black neighborhood. Graphic Packaging is a paper mill. State of Michigan has given it a lot of money, grants, those kind of things, has also approved permit after permit for them to expand, despite knowing through residents like you that there has been a lot of air pollution and questions about toxic chemicals coming out of this plant, not just in the air, but getting into other parts of the community. You were basically blown off, you and some other activists, from what I could tell, by the state environmental department, and health department, same health and environmental department that covered up the Flint water crisis and continues to. So tell us, for those not familiar with the story, when did you first start getting involved with this? What is coming out of this plant that is making the air so foul smelling?
There's like 30 different toxic chemicals and gases coming out, and it's next door to an environmental justice community with an environmental justice score in the 90th percentile. And that's for cancer and respiratory disease. I developed asthma when I moved there after a few years, but I had no idea that it was connected to that factory. I didn't really know anything until I'd owned a few houses in the neighborhood, but the last house I bought was over Zoom during the pandemic. And within days after me moving in, I started getting burning eyes, which was a symptom I never had any other house that I lived in. And I started just to suspect, and then my asthma was acting up too. I just started to suspect it's coming from the wastewater plant or Graphic Packaging. And I called both plants and they both blamed it on each other. So I did a Freedom of Information request in July of 2020 and found out they had done gas studies in 2009 and 2020 that showed high amounts of hydrogen sulfide, methyl mercaptan, sulfur dioxide, all kinds of toxins that were 5 times the minimum health risk level for humans. And they never told us. The city of Kalamazoo started monitoring for hydrogen sulfide in 2019 and never notified the public. And I just started going door to door, and I found out everyone else had asthma or COPD or emphysema, just like I did. And then I just started raising alarm bells, calling the city of Kalamazoo meetings, found out that they were going to expand the plant fought against the plant expansion because they were already putting out 500,000 tons per year of toxic gases. They were going to add another 700,000 tons to that. And the city gave them a $21 million tax break despite outcry and public health concerns. For years, there was many odor complaints, odor violations. They kind of played it off as an odor instead of really looking into to see if the odor was toxic, because I think they already knew it was toxic. And they just, I don't know. I just feel like people must be paid off either in the government or all the politicians or something, because I just can't understand why they wouldn't help everybody, especially when everybody was calling in and asking for help and begging for help. And then I got a toxicologist that was a partner for the EPA and did some work for ATSDR to do a toxicology report in December of 2020. It was finished and it said that there is a severe health risk to everyone in the environmental justice community and a severe health risk to the employees at the wastewater plant and graphic packaging, which are right next door to each other and right next door to this fence line, red line, predominantly African-American community. And I filed a civil rights complaint against the city of Kalamazoo. I filed a civil rights complaint against Eagle for allowing this packaging plant to expand, to increase pollution. And I'm in resolution with the EPA External Civil Rights, finalizing our agreement with Eagle right now. So I cannot believe the stuff they've done in the last couple of months while we're in this resolution agreement. Just like the spill that graphic packaging had to the river was 2,000 gallons in October of last year. The city and Eagle and graphic packaging didn't even tell U.S. and Fish and Wildlife, because I called them and they said, yeah, we emailed Eagle about it, and they wouldn't even email us back. And I was like, oh my gosh. And so there was like 2,000 gallons of untreated waste that spilled into the river from graphic packaging. And all of a sudden, I think it was yesterday or the day before, they said that no, the testing from Eagle is inconclusive, and we found some traces of mercury, which is something graphic packaging releases, but it could have been cross-contamination from something else, and they'll have to put barriers now. But it's like, why are you protecting this company so much? I just don't understand. There's so many people sick, and you're sitting here protecting the company who was violating the Clean Air Act like every single day and violating the water.
And I want to show this. This is their own state of the air report from a few years ago, right, where Kalamazoo got an F for ozone. If you look at data comparing Michigan, Kalamazoo to the rest of Michigan, to the U.S., look at the chronic lower respiratory disease, 48%.
Higher than the U.S.
Yeah, it's about seven percentage points higher than the United States in terms of leading causes of death. A little bit over the state of Michigan. This is from 2017, so it could be worse.
They don't talk about the COVID death rate either in the neighborhood, right, which is extremely.
Tell me about that.
Extremely high. There's a ton of people that were in their early 20s that had asthma since they were kids that died from COVID. I've tried to get the news to like talk about it.
Younger people, like 20s, 30s.
Yeah, younger people, kids. There was a report I found from the county health department that showed 1,900. There's only like 8,000 people in the neighborhood. And like it said, like 1,950 people, Black babies, which most of them are in the neighborhood in Kalamazoo County, died in 2017 under the age of 1. So I asked the toxicologist of the report, do you think that it could be because the babies had underdeveloped lungs and were exposed to the air pollution? He said, absolutely. And that was covered up as well. We've had the highest Black baby death rate in the United States for many, many years in Kalamazoo. It's the highest in the United States.
Yeah, I don't want to misstate it because I don't remember which one. I think it was Omicron that they said that for children, it was either Delta or Omicron, I don't know. But for children was more concerning because it attacked them in the lower respiratory, right, which was underdeveloped for children. So what you're saying, if you're already through this community, your lower respiratory is already vulnerable because of toxic air pollution, it would make an airborne, a potentially deadly airborne virus even more threatening.
And Kalamazoo is different compared to other environmental justice communities because it's actually a valley. So if you live in a valley, it actually traps air pollution. So that also makes it more of a risk. And when I had the toxicology report done, I had an epidemiology report that showed we had the highest asthma hospitalization rate in the region as well, Midwest region. I had both of those reports sent to Michigan Department of Health and Human Services in December of 2020. And we have been waiting on this health consultation to give health recommendations due to the air pollution causing health risks to community members since then. And it's been delayed like 3 or 4 times. And we just can't figure it out. For some reason, I've been told by a lot of people, I've been told by like an employee at Eagle that it could be because the director, or actually, I think she's the manager of the tax program at Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. Her name is Andrea Keeley. She's married to the deputy director of Eagle, Aaron Keeley. And he never really did anything to like help prevent, any of this from happening, because they never did any real enforcement against graphic packaging all this time. They just wrote written notice of violations with no fines, no shutting down the plant to fix their leaking equipment, which was on these gas studies that I found, that they had leaking equipment at the wastewater plant and graphic packaging, pipes, a junction chamber that's been delayed so that graphic packaging could put in a parking lot for their expansion. The corruption is real. It's very sick.
Let me just explain for people, because obviously there's other issues in Michigan and in the country than Flint, but why it's important to kind of bring you back to Flint on this is because basically the state of Michigan's environmental department, which other than the governor was very, very responsible for Flint, they, in my view, well, not view, based on my reporting, they covered it up. They knew people were drinking toxic water, and they covered it up. They would not notify the public of Flint. What they did was basically, when a few years went by, they kind of just rebranded under Governor Whitmer. They changed their name from Michigan Department of Environmental Quality to like Energy, Environment, and Great Lakes Eagle.
Yeah, they changed their names of both agencies after the Flint water crisis, thinking that that's going to make people think that they've changed, but they're doing the same shit.
The health department covered up lead data. The health department knew about Legionnaires, didn't notify the public. And with this, although it's not a water crisis, they've known.
I think it's a water crisis, an air crisis, and a soil crisis. Like I tell the EPA all the time, if graphic packaging is considered a Superfund site, for one, why did you let them expand? You should have cleaned it up. And 2, why didn't you test the soil and the water in the neighborhood next door to the Superfund site? That's also a Superfund site. I'd bet any type of money that 100% positivity that there is every environmental justice community in the United States of America is a Superfund site. They just don't say it.
And also we should point out Kalamazoo overall is majority white, but this plant is
next door to a predominantly African-American community. But since the expansion did start up after they completed it in February of 2022, now the pollution and the odor has traveled to the white areas of the city. And now they are getting burning eyes, burning lungs, coughing, same type of.
Isn't that interesting? All of a sudden, when the white people are starting to get the odor and starting to feel the effects, the state health and environmental department is suddenly taking action.
They're not really taking action, though. They only gave him a $100,000 fine. I think it's being related to my civil rights complaint, because there's been tons of white people that have complained too, not just because there's a hospital that's right above graphic packaging with a lot of white, gorgeous employees that have complained for years that they're sick at work. There's employees that work, white employees that work on Riverview Drive next to graphic packaging that are sick at work and have to call in for headaches, asthma attacks. I've talked to all the business employees and owners over there as well. So the city has real-time hydrogen sulfide monitoring, and there's a monitor on the corner of Riverview and Gold Road in Kalamazoo that is like 47 times the limit for health, and they're still not doing anything. It's like, I just don't understand. I mean, even part of this health study, which I don't blame the toxicologist who's worked on it, because Dr. Brandon Reed's done this mostly himself. And I don't think that anyone from that department would have took it on. He was new. He came out of a University of Michigan graduate, new to the agency. And I've helped him, helped him with the study a lot too, just providing information that I have and found in the toxicology for everything that started the study to begin with, because it's the first air pollution study that's ever been done in the state of Michigan. So I'm in constant contact with Dr. Reed, but his boss and everybody above him is the one that's delayed this. I mean, he told me, I think it was in January of 2021 that it was finished. And now every time, everyone asks, why is this delayed again? They'll say it's under scientific review, or we don't know when it's going to be done. We're not going to tell you when it's going to be done. We don't know when. And I'm asking for asthma vans to come in, because there's high asthma rates. There's a elementary school around the corner from there. This is traveling everywhere. There's a city commissioner that's new on the city of Kalamazoo Commissioner Stephanie Hoffman, that spoke out recently and said that she moved into the north side in 2018 and said that now she is sick as well. And so we're just trying to figure out, where's the help, why is human life just not really important to the governmental agencies that are supposed to protect human life and the environment? What's the holdup?
That's it. So in my years doing this, I have learned that surprisingly, the environmental departments in Michigan, the health department in Michigan, and I would probably venture to guess most cities, you would think that their main mandate is health of the citizens, health of the environment, health of the water, the air, the soil, wildlife, etc. But more and more, you are seeing in the marketing, the PR, even the websites, even the way officials in these departments talk, really a lot of talk about business development, a lot of talk about economic growth, a lot of talk about urban renewal. I've seen that a lot when it comes to Flint, where the environmental department of Michigan, in many ways, thought that was told that their main mandate is to help with economic development in Michigan. So it's kind of a conflict if a place like Graphic Packaging, which might create a certain amount of jobs for the community, might spur some type of economic development, might be paying politicians donations.
Oh, they are.
Yeah. Well, tell us more.
I've seen the reports. I've seen the PACs and the representatives that they donate to. My son looked it up even when he was 15, because he just couldn't believe, that we, as soon as I found these reports, we moved. I sold my house, and I told the investor that bought the house, I gave him reports so that they could see what they're, if they bought my house, that they need to know there's hydrogen sulfide leaks and other chemical leaks. And even my realtor suggested me not to disclose that. Because it's not something people normally do, but I just felt like it was my duty to notify the owner that bought my house of their risk to their health if they do buy it. And I had to sell it for a lot cheaper than I would have, I feel like, because of that, because I needed to leave as soon as possible and to protect my family. As soon as I got those reports, I was only in the house a couple of weeks, and I was running air purifiers in my home, scared to death for my family. And my lungs have only improved 5% since I moved out into the country. And my doctor told me they won't improve any more than that. So,
and you're not,
she said that
you're not an older person. What are you, in your 40s?
I'm 43. And but what the sad part is, like she said, it's a good thing you left, because, your lungs would have just kept getting worse. And it's totally true, because everyone that I talk to on a regular basis, people always send me videos or tell me how bad the odor is. I call pollution emergency line for people a lot. They don't know how to file air complaints. Not everyone is educated on how to file complaints with the Environmental Great Lakes and Energy. So I try to help people. And it aggravates my post-traumatic stress disorder to a degree that is just, I'm on anxiety pills, blood pressure pills. It was not this bad before this. Being an activist is the hardest thing I've ever done, but I felt like I have to do that because I'm a human being with a heart, and I care that people are sick and dying. And I just don't understand these people that are getting paid salaries. It's their job to protect human health and the environment. They're not doing that. These city politicians are working together with the state and working together with graphic packaging to cover up the pollution and cover up the health risks instead of helping people. And I feel like that's all they care about. I mean, why do you just care about your liability? I mean, you have liability insurance. I mean, why do you care? Like, why don't you just want to help people? You know, even with the lawsuit, like I filed the lawsuit a few months after I found the class action lawsuit, a few months after I found the gas studies that we were never told about. And, you know, so I did everything I could. I filed civil rights complaints. I've talked to the news. I've, you know, filed the lawsuit. I've got the health studies done. I've initiated the state health study. I've done everything I can to save lives. And it's still almost 3 years later and nothing has been done to help people in the neighborhood. And everyone that had asthma or COPD is now getting diagnosed with emphysema, which is an irreversible lung disease.
What is the state health or environmental department's rationale? On one hand, they've granted graphic packaging new air permits, because you need a permit if you're going to be emitting toxins into the air. So on one hand, they're continually granting these new permits, but on the other end, they're fining them. So have they explained why they continue to issue new permits if they know that this company has been releasing toxic gas that's making people sick?
No, they don't explain. They don't explain. I mean, you could have a million environmental Great Lakes and energy public hearings for permits, and they do this all over the state of Michigan. They do it in environmental justice communities in Flint, Detroit, Kalamazoo, Grand Rapids, wherever. Like, they don't do health impact studies before they issue these permits. But I believe, because of my civil rights complaint, that there will be health impact studies done from this point forward, and we will be able to protect our children, grandchildren, great grandchildren going forward. And, you know, this is the thing. No matter how much everyone looks at me like I'm the enemy because I'm the truth teller of all of this, it's really like, we can't change the past. We can't change the corruption from the past. We can't change the lack of education from the past, but we can change what we're going to do for the future. And that's what everyone needs to do. They need to work together, and they need to change everything so that it better protects the health of our future generations, because that's what's important. We cannot change the past. We're already poisoned. We're already sick, but we can change it for the future. And that's why I'm hopeful in what I've done through my activism and civil rights complaints and the class action lawsuit. I'm hoping we'll be able to get justice and changes through the measures that I've taken to help save lives, because there's nothing else I can do. Like, I've done every possible thing I can do.
Let me show some of the death rates. This was in 2015, so I don't have anything more recent. But obviously, if you look at it, it's pretty tilted in terms of more Black residents in the county dying. Adjusted rate for whites is significantly under Black residents, and that kind of makes sense if this factory is in a predominantly Black part of Kalamazoo. But that is quite the discrepancy, and it should show. I mean, it's not just, all due respect, very old people with significant death rates. I mean, you're seeing 35 to 40. I mean, even 25 to 34.
The under 1 year old is what gets me right there. 1,950.
Yeah, that's just horrific.
White is 361.
And by the way, this was before COVID, so this is 2015. Yeah. If I could get updated ones.
So babies, and a lot of them, they would tell mothers that, your babies died because you rolled over them because they were in bed for you. And not everybody, that's just mean to even tell a mother that if there's another reason. I don't think 2,000 mothers have rolled over on their babies and killed them. I think that's insane to even say that. And I just don't understand it. We can have economic development that's safe for people. We don't need to have pollution. We can have pollution prevention in place. It's not expensive for a company like Graphic Packaging, who makes billions of dollars a quarter. and so I just don't see it. And I feel like more of the agencies need to work together. That's why I filed a civil rights complaint with HUD and the Michigan Department of Civil Rights. I think that the best option is, if they're not going to shut down these plants, is to relocate people. And I've been saying this at the White House Environmental Justice Council meetings since they started, that, we can use HUD housing vouchers that they give people that are homeless to relocate people. We can use, if all the agencies work together now, there's, I've talked to every federal environmental justice department that there is. Like, there's an environmental justice department at Health and Human Services now. There's environmental justice at HUD now department. There's an environmental justice at Department DOJ. They're everywhere now. So if everyone just works together, the funding's starting to come in, and all the agencies work together to relocate these people away from this, because there's already a 14-year death gap before the expansion happened in Kalamazoo. I can't imagine what it would be going forward more years. Another thing I don't like is that Eagle has this thing, there's this toxic ashes all over everyone's cars and houses. And they're like, oh, that's just dirt. So that's in the last couple of days, people were calling about it and saying, and they came out to test and say they won't test it because it's dirt. Well, why don't you just test it and see if it's dirt or if it's toxic ash? Why do you just say that? You can't just visibly say that it's not. What's wrong with testing it to see?
Right.
Like what's up with all the testing, like, inaccuracies here. There's the testing that got fudged up with the river. Eagle saying that it was inconclusive, but there's 2,000 gallons of untreated waste that came from graphic packaging to the river. And do you think that any of these river alliances or any river groups or environmental groups don't know what's going on here? Like, what is their payoffs? Like, what's going on? Why are you allowing these people to literally pollute the river, which goes out to Lake Michigan, and from Lake Michigan goes out to the Atlantic Ocean, which also increases climate change? I mean, these guys are bad guys. They are really, really bad guys. They're located in environmental justice communities all over the world, not just Kalamazoo, but they somehow thought, let's make Kalamazoo the number one, the number one company. Let's make it the biggest company. Let's poison these people the worst, even though there's been 150 air complaints filed in the last couple of years from residents and employees. Like, it's like insane to me, and I cannot understand it. And I never will understand it. But I do know that I've seen newspaper articles, even during the Flint water crisis, where people from Eagle, well, it was DEQ then, saying that, they are supposed to work with Michigan Department of Michigan Department of Economic Development. So you can't have an environmental and health protection agency work with an economic development agency. They should be completely separate from each other because their goals are completely opposite. So you're never going to get a resolution for people. And if you ignore it, it's never going to go away. I'm not going to stop talking about it. More people are aware now, so it's not going to go away. And I'm sorry that they have another Flint water type crisis that they have to handle, but that's just what it is. I mean, if prevention measures were put into place and enforcement was done years ago, it wouldn't be as bad as it is. I would have never moved to Kalamazoo if I would have been notified of the gas study that was done in 2009, because I moved there in 2012. If I would have saw on the news, hey, we did this gas study and found high amounts of hydrogen sulfide and all these chemicals in Kalamazoo, do you think I would have moved there for the Kalamazoo Promise for my son to go to college for free? No, I don't think a lot of people would have.
And can you kind of describe, I know you're not there anymore, but could you describe what the smell is like in that area?
Eggs. It's hydrogen sulfide mostly. I mean, it's all the chemicals, but a lot of the chemicals don't have a smell. But hydrogen sulfide is the only one they're testing for because it's unregulated.
Got it.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. And the latest on this is graphic packaging is now forced to publicize data about the toxic gas sensors at their facility, which they, as far as I know, do not want to share this information about.
I don't trust it anyways. I think they change their emissions. The emissions are different during out late at night than they are during the day when more people are at work or not going to school or they can notice things. Most of the air complaints from the residents are at night when the emissions are different. I don't trust the city sensors. They have malfunctions a lot. They're the one at the Borges Hospital has been down since December, I think. I don't trust any of the testing. I think the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services should have done their own testing instead of relying on the city of Kalamazoo corrupt politicians and the wastewater plant corrupt employees or directors who also had to have recent employee monitors put on for chemicals that were found by a drone by Eagle, but was
chemicals that were found by a drone.
Yeah, they brought a drone in and never told anyone. We got it through a FOIA request. And Brad Devereaux, who works for MLive, he actually was looking over, him and I both look over a lot of the studies, and he found that they were in parts per million instead of parts per billion. So he told the director that, hey, there's a lot of formaldehyde in this plant. You might want to look into this report a little bit more. And then all of a sudden, MIOSHA is having the employees wear chemical monitors, and we still don't have the results for those. And I think that was November of last year. And so we still have no results for that. But yeah, like I said, the toxicology report said that that there's a severe health risk to employees at both plants. And you could literally type in graphic packaging in Google and obituaries, and you can see like everybody that's worked there has died from cancer all over the United States. It's sickening, really.
And can you talk about the Michigan, the MEDC? It's the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, because from my understanding, they have issued several grants.
Strategic Fund as part of it too.
Right.
And MSF is what they call it.
They've awarded, I'm looking here, as much as $98 million in tax credits and incentives over the past decade to graphic packaging, despite all of this.
Yep. They gave them money. They could have used all that money to relocate people, because they knew about like all the air complaints before the expansion was approved. The expansion didn't even get approved by Eagle until the year 2020. I think they gave them money, or they were told they were going to get the money in 2019. And then like the city of Kalamazoo politicians, David Anderson is the mayor, and like you could just see, and Bobby Hopewell is the ex-mayor. And as soon as he stepped down, David Anderson became the mayor of Kalamazoo, and they are best friends. They live next door to each other. And Bobby became part of the MEDC after he was mayor of Kalamazoo. And then you could see like the evilness in David Anderson's eyes, because whenever people would call in and say, you had people calling into like city of commission meetings saying, with trachs in their throats, like on oxygen tanks, like begging for their lives, please don't give them this tax break to expand. Please help us. Please, because they get donations from this anonymous agency or anonymous foundation of excellence, where I think it's a bunch of polluters, because they won't tell us who donates the money. But they got a $400 million donation that they could have relocated people with. They could have helped people get medical care. But when you see his face, whenever you call him, when you see certain commissioners' faces, when people call in begging for their lives, it's just like no compassion, no heartfelt, like, I want to help you. Like, it's just like cold, evil eyes, like just ignoring, not even addressing people's comments half of the time. And I think there's only been like the new vice mayor, Don Cooney, and Stephanie Hoffman are the only ones that have said we need to clean up this air pollution on the north side. That's the only people I've seen speak out, and they're new. So they weren't the ones that voted for the tax break or gave graphic packaging land to expand on. And I don't know what it is about this company. I literally don't. I cannot figure out what hold they have over everybody, because it's just a corporation based in Atlanta, Georgia. They're not even from Michigan. Like,
well, what happened? I thought the governor was Democrat in Michigan. I thought the attorney general was a Democrat. I thought they're like, about environmental justice, and they run a lot trying to cater to Black communities in Detroit, Flint, Kalamazoo, you know, a lot of other communities. Where are they on this? Because obviously this predates Gretchen Whitmer, but I'm sure she knows about it.
I've contacted her office plenty of times, and I've emailed the attorney general, and I'm not sure if I've talked to her assistant a couple of times a couple of years ago. I've contacted every politician. There's politicians that went to these odor task force meetings, which are really toxic gas force meetings, where they've like attended these private meetings and they never did anything to help. Supposedly the governor just announced more money for environmental justice. I don't know. It's like, yeah, I hear a lot of things, you know, and about environmental justice funding coming for everything. I just don't see the actions happening fast enough in my eyes, because I remember when I talked to you last time, you said if this was happening in like Russia or something, this would be considered a war crime. So why are you allowing people to get sick and die? Like, why is this not an emergency? I even called FEMA and I was like, can you guys do something? Like, what did you guys do to help Flint? And they're like, they only told us to bring in bottled water for Flint. So
but it's not even why are you allowing it? Why are you paying this company to do this?
To increase the pollution.
Because
that's even worse.
You're letting them expand. You get correct me if I'm wrong, but the city has issued tax breaks to them.
$21 million. Yep.
21 million?
Yep.
I mean,
and they're
unless the plan is to kill off, you know, a certain part of the population. I don't want to be a kook. I would hope that's not what they're trying to do.
The weird thing is that they're so naive or corrupt that they don't realize that the pollution is actually like harming the entire city. It's harming the African American community more severely. But because Kalamazoo is a valley and all the neighborhoods are connected and low on the ground, it's actually hurting everyone in Kalamazoo. And there's been 15 paper mills at one time. Graphic Packaging is the last one standing. So all the other ones got shut down for their pollution and had to clean up their pollution. But Graphic Packaging is allowed to expand and increase the pollution. How does that make sense? It doesn't make sense to any of us. You know?
Can you kind of talk about, I know you're not there anymore, but obviously you keep in touch with people. Is there, you know, any coordinated activism going on? Or the residents just kind of like working too many hours, too tired?
I think they just rely on me because they see that I've like done all these things already, like civil rights complaints, you know, class action lawsuit, you know, talking to the news as much as I can to bring awareness. I mean, there's people that speak up though too, that live there, like Dr. David Benak and his wife. And there's residents that live in the neighborhood that have spoke to the news. So there are people that do try to speak up, and then everyone calls into the city meetings. They call into the public hearings for environmental, Great Lakes, and energy. But I haven't seen anybody that should be standing up for residents, like the NAACP in Kalamazoo, or any environmental groups. Like I would belong to the Sierra Club, and I do not anymore because they did nothing to help. There's just a lot of environmental groups that care about donations and don't use the donations to actually protect the environment or health. And so there's an environmental justice caucus that I belong to that's new in Michigan. And I also belong to the Michigan Environmental Justice Coalition as well. But there's only so much we can do without the government's help. I mean, that's sucks to say, but you know, the government, I mean, it's always been that way. Everyone's lives are in the government's hands.
And essentially, I mean, people are continuing to be poisoned. I mean, kids play outside and people take walks and walk their dog, and Lord knows how far, you know, these toxins that they're emitting go. So really there's no, I mean, you could try and quantify it as best as possible in data, but you know, it's not always a straight line. You know, somebody could get, it could affect people in that community in a lot of different ways in terms of lungs, heart.
Heart disease is another big one there too. Yeah.
Right.
And it's not just,
I mean, it's even been, there's even research to study with air pollution affects your mood and, you know, potentially crime.
Oh, mental health. This is another thing. We have a huge like crime, public health crisis in Kalamazoo. Pollution has been linked to crime by studies by Harvard and I think Columbia University. There's quite a few studies done that says crime is linked to air pollution. So if you want to get a hold of the crime, get a hold on this air pollution. You should be forcing every polluter in the United States to either shut down or put carbon filtration on their smokestacks and make sure that they do not have malfunctioning equipment that are leaking out toxic gases. It's not rocket science. I say this all the time. This is common sense stuff. Why are you not forcing this? The enforcement level for the government is horrible. But, we have a new administrator. I'm going to give him a chance and hope that he really is serious because he's the first Black administrator that we've ever had for the EPA. And I see him touring environmental justice communities. No one's done that before. Our governor has toured Kalamazoo for other things, but I've never seen her tour our environmental justice community, or it's never been in the news as she has. But I would love her to. I would love to talk to Governor Whitmer about this. I would love to work with people because I'm not against anyone. I just upset that there's no help. I want to make sure that I can coordinate with all of these agencies together to get help. And that's why I had to file these complaints. If everyone would have listened to me and looked at the studies that were already done in 2020, we wouldn't be at this point. But everyone ignored me and hoped that I would go away and not focus on. It's not just the air pollution, it's the PFAS pollution from the wastewater plant and graphic packaging into the river and into the neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. It's PCB. Which
are, for those that don't know, the PFAS are what they call the forever chemicals, that there's a big problem all over the country, but in Michigan in particular.
And they don't test for all of the PFAS. I think there's like 7,000 of them, and they don't test. What do they test? Like 70 of them or something? There's just not enough. For most part, are a byproduct of the manufacturing process of things like Teflon, nonstick cookware, but they are linked to miscarriages, cancers, reproductive issues, mental, cognitive issues. But it's all really related to race too, because all of these environmental justice communities are redlined, and redlining is something the federal government did in the 30s, and it's been outlawed since the Civil Rights Act, since it was enacted in 1968. So the cities continue to follow the redlining and continue to allow the polluters to expand or move next door to these redline communities when they know they shouldn't have. And HUD should have never continued to fund cities that were violating the civil rights of African Americans or Latinos or low-income white people. This is happening. They just target people. And I think it's the most inhumane thing I've ever witnessed, studied, encountered, been a victim of myself, my family. I cannot, to me, it seems like, why don't you just there was an article, I think that Reuters or maybe Public Integrity did. They said there's only 232,000 people located in environmental justice communities in the United States of America. So just relocate the 232,000 people. There's over 50 million people in the United States. You can't afford to relocate 232,000 people. If you're not going to shut down the factories, get the people out of the way.
Yeah, I see that perspective, but I also see the other, because I've seen in Flint and other places, some people are very, their home is their identity, and they don't want to move because their family was there for generations and they want help.
People that want to move should have the option.
Yes, totally.
That's
totally
what I
agree.
mean by that. I'm not saying if you want to stay and get polluted, that's your choice. But
most
people that I talk to, they want to leave in Kalamazoo.
Yeah, let me rephrase. People who want to leave should be able to leave. People who want to stay should be able to stay and actually get help.
Right.
Clean up. Everybody should be getting health care. I mean, it's a crime from Flint to a lot of other communities that you don't have health care for damage that you had nothing to do with you. Same thing goes for COVID, which we were supposed to get free health care. Biden during the debate said COVID treatment would be free. That went away real quick because we live in the United Corporations of America. But it's really a disaster. And
It's really bad everywhere, though. I don't even think it's in just the environmental justice communities, because when I looked at the air monitoring data for Michiganders in the UP and all over the state of Michigan, there's criteria pollutants that are not being monitored. So there's people that are living where they think it's not an environmental justice community and they think that their air is fine and it won't make them sick, but they just are unaware that it's not being monitored, or the companies are not being forced. So, you wonder why there might be a high cancer rate in your city or your county. And it's probably don't have any enforcement being done by the Environmental Great Lakes and Energy, or you're not having your air monitored properly and you're not being told about it. One of the biggest things I'm hoping for out of my civil rights complaint with the EPA is that that there's going to be a lot more monitoring, a lot more public awareness, a lot more medical help for everyone, that no one else will be ignored in the future, and that no more polluters will be allowed to expand or locate next door to red line communities or low income white communities or Native American communities, Latino communities. I just think it's insane. I think that, me being a white person I think that's got me a lot farther, because I've witnessed activists of minorities that have been doing this for 20 years, that have been ignored for 20 years. And I've gotten pretty far in 2 or 3 years. And I believe that justice is coming for us in the next couple of months. And it might not be the justice that I hope for, but I do believe that justice will be coming soon in some form, especially with my civil rights complaints that are finalizing at this moment and are in our lawsuit, because Graphic Packaging's class action lawsuit is like they're grasping for straws at this point to even say that they have been polluting everyone for 100 years, and it seems to be okay that they've done that. So I believe that there's some hope. But like I said, we can't do anything about the past. We could sit here and talk all day. Oh, it's corruption, and they did this, and they did that, and they did this, and they did that. But it's not going to help us for the future. All we can do now is we can't blame everybody either. We can blame the politicians and the governors and the agencies and all that type of stuff, but that's still not going to get us any help. What we have to do is all the governors and the politicians that have children and grandchildren and great grandchildren, they need to think about those. They need to think about their own families, and they need to realize that climate change is real. Environmental justice is real. Air pollution is the #1 killer in the world. And if we come together and we work together to solve this problem as soon as possible, then we will be able to save more lives. And that's what I want. I just want everyone to stop dying and to stop getting sick from something that is easily prevented.
And how do people help if we're talking about the future? I mean, I certainly will put the number under the video to the health department, the environmental department, the governor's office. But how do people in Kalamazoo or in Michigan or close by?
I think everyone should keep calling the governor and call the, just keep calling the health department and say, please release this health consultation. Because we can't have any more delays. We need these health recommendations that you are telling us that you're going to be implementing. And,
for people that don't know, you want them to ask, demand that the data
from the Department of Health and Human Services release the health consultation as soon as possible, and call the governor's office and the attorney general's office and say that we do not want Graphic Packaging to be criminally poisoning us anymore, poisoning Kalamazoo anymore. Is the health consultation you want released the data of the levels that they've been emitting? That's part of it, but it's mostly recommendations, health recommendations. So I just think that, maybe bringing in asthma vans, which was one thing that I asked for, or making sure everyone has health care, making sure everyone is tested, has inhalers, people that don't have inhalers. But like I said, I would really rather have everyone relocated, because it's not fair that these kids need to go to school near these 2 toxic polluters. I mean, Graphic Packaging is right next door to the wastewater plant, and Pfizer goes through the wastewater plant and 18 other industrial facilities. So you have 2 hazardous, big, huge corporations, you know, that are polluting the area, and they're pretty much making money off everyone's lives, and they're not doing anything to help anyone. So why, you know, also, why can't you just be a responsible polluter? I see, you know, all these ads. Procter & Gamble is I think they are part of, they have a contract with Graphic Packaging. And I saw a commercial where they talk about being, you know, racial, you know, caring about racial equity. So why don't you demand that Graphic Packaging and Procter & Gamble come out and say, hey, we're not going to do business with you until you help the African-American community next door to you that you're polluting? Why don't some of these companies start standing up for people? You know, capitalism has been here for a long time, and I don't think it's ever going to go away, but it's not right. It's inhumane. Like, we're all emotional beings. We're all born with hearts. Every investor, every CEO, every employee, every human being in the United States has a heart and should have compassion and should be humane and should stand up for people. Like, it shouldn't be, if more white people would have stood up for this a long time ago, I wouldn't even be talking to you right now. I shouldn't be one of the only white activists speaking out against this. I shouldn't be the only white person filing civil rights complaints for, you know, toxic pollution expansions by plants next to African-American communities. Right. This is insane. Like, there should be plenty more white people standing up. I don't know why white people are afraid to speak up for minorities or even their own kind. I mean, there's low-income white people. I grew up in a small town where we had factory pollution, and I didn't even think about it until recently that because there's a parking lot there. So I completely forgot that we actually had a factory in Dowagiac where I grew up, and it was called Do Wells. And I found out, like, from one of my friends recently, a lot of people that work there got cancer, and it was located next to our middle school and our high school. And this is a low income, predominantly white, but we have Native American, African Americans. I'd say it's more of like 60-40, you know, race wise now. But, you know, it's like no one knew then. I don't think. I don't know. Like I said, in the past, people were what did it start in the 1970s, the regulations, you know, no one really thought about it in the 80s or the 90s. Yeah. I feel like now we have enough awareness. Now we have enough data. Now we have enough information. We have Google. We can search things. We can search up health reports and studies and ATSDR studies and stuff like that. So why, you know, there's nothing we can do about the past. Like, we have to do something now for the future. And so I'm hopeful that these environmental justice funds will help.
Yeah, the dirty secret of America is for our, you know, all the good of industrial revolution. They did not consider the environment much, or air, water, soil. There was no EPA, like you just said, until the 70s. And a lot of the EPA's significant programs were not implemented until the 90s, really. Right. The EPA has always been notoriously underfunded. Same thing goes for the state agencies. And like I said, a lot of these agencies, their blueprints have shifted over the years to really be partners in economic development, which frankly, the health department and the environmental department don't have any business in a state's economic development. They need to be specifically focused on protecting the health of the people, because
well, that's why we need the environmental justice for all act passed as well. That's why I want people to call their politicians all over the United States and say, we need the environmental justice for all act passed immediately, because that will help people so much. And I don't want people to lose their jobs. Like, I think some people get mad at me because that they think I want them to lose their jobs. That's not the case. They're getting poisoned too, and they don't deserve to get poisoned either, or their families be traumatized because their parents get cancer from working at Graphic Packaging or another, you know, toxic polluter. As this act, it involves training the people that work at polluting facilities and moving over to renewable energy and climate change jobs and stuff like that. And they give them like a severance, I think it's like $60,000 severance pay or something like that, to move over to, you know, a company that they can work for and not have to worry about their health risks. So the Environmental Justice for All Act being passed is huge, huge, huge for everybody.
Absolutely.
And so I thought it was going to be passed like a few months ago. They were talking about it, but it's also going to hold corporate polluters responsible. So, you know, I mean, it is what it is. But I'm telling you, like, I cannot understand why there's not more help done for these communities, why there's not more people speaking up, or there's not anything being done to protect the health and the environment faster. I know everything is a bureaucracy, but you know,
not to get on my high horse at 8:30 at night, but the media certainly hasn't helped. I think
that's another thing. Yeah, we don't have a lot of media that really. I mean, we have local coverage, and I've been contacted by national news networks that are waiting on the health consultation. So I'm like, is that another reason why they're delaying it? Because they've.
But why are they waiting? They're the media. Why aren't they investigating? Why aren't they trying to build sources? Why aren't they demanding transparency? I mean, it shouldn't take. I mean, this is like reparations. We need to have a committee,
right,
and then have a committee to decide on another committee, and then do a study. And before you know it,
I think another thing is the United States knows to afford to pay the reparations that people are due. I feel like that's part of it. They think that the government will never be able to afford to pay for it. So instead of I see these reparation committees and stuff, but they can do something. I mean, the
United States prints money for war.
Exactly.
It has
but that's
plenty of money.
Excuses I see. You know, I'm tired of the excuses. I'm tired of the delays. I'm tired of, you know, we help other countries that are in the war, but we are literally seeing war crimes happen practically against our own people and doing nothing. So to me, it's like, what's going on here? Like, what is going on? Why?
Is that
the reason why the minority compared to the whites? I always wonder that too. I'm like, you know, we have such a high percentage of white people in the United States, but we have such a low percentage of minorities in the United States. Is it because the intent was to kill them off?
Yeah.
I know it sounds harsh, but I'm just saying, like,
yeah,
especially because the African American population produces a lot more children too than white generations do. And so you would think the population would be a lot higher by now, you know? So
I'll never forget, because I've driven to Michigan at this point probably 7 or 8 times. And each time you arrive, the first thing you see on the highway is the sign Pure Michigan. And it's just, that's their little branding, marketing, how pure everything is, and the air and the water and the Great Lakes, but it's purely poisoning people. I mean, that's the truth. Not just in Flint, but a lot of other problems between the water, the air, soil, PFAS, so fracking. So yeah, we'll stay on this.
I just wish people would just become more aware, because I just feel like a lot of people are asleep. You know, they say, what are they saying? There's like only 5% of us that are really awake to the real problems that are going on in the world. That's a really low percentage, 5%.
Right.
But I had to educate myself to become aware, because there's not enough public notification of this stuff. There's nothing being taught in elementary school, middle school, high school about pollution and pollution prevention, or where do you want to live? You should have a choice. Everyone should know what their environmental justice score is before they buy a house. Like, you're moving next door. If I would have known that my environmental justice score was 90% chance of getting cancer and respiratory disease, I would have never moved to that neighborhood. I mean, it's just something that the EPA had that we could have, you know, had the news alert the public, you know. So I just think that we're just going to have to make some changes, and it's going to be hard, and people are going to complain, and people are going to cry, and people are going to file lawsuits, and all kinds of stuff is going to happen. But without change, then people are going to continue to die and continue to suffer health consequences. And that just cannot happen anymore.
Thanks for fighting a good fight. I'm glad we talked again. Tried to get attention on this. And next time I'm in Michigan, which might be soon, I'll definitely stop over in Kalamazoo and try to get more attention on this, because you're not the only one. I mean, there's a lot of factories, whatever, paper mills, steel, mining, that are leaking all sorts of toxic shit into the air, soil, in Black communities, brown communities, on indigenous reservations, and it gets very little attention.
Oh, and I get sick of people saying, "Oh, why would you move there?" Some people, that's all they can afford. You can only afford to live where you can afford to live. There's a lot of these HUD apartment complexes that are in environmental justice communities. That's all they can afford to live. Like, you can only afford to live where you can afford to live. Like,
and now it's getting even more. Now it's getting even more expensive to live in rural areas and areas that used to be cheaper compared to the cities and et cetera.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But you can't do the blame game anymore. I mean, it's like, we can sit here and there's a lot of people at fault for this, but what we need to do is, everybody that has children, grandchildren, and will have children and grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and thankfully my son, who's a teenager, almost an adult, they're more progressive and they're more aware and they fight for climate change and stuff like that. I'm excited about the future generations who are actually aware and want to see progress in this. But we just need everyone to start working together and solving the crisis. And just, we can't change the past, but we can change what's happening now, and we can change what can happen for the future to protect our families. And that's all we need to do, is work together. It's really that simple.
Thanks for taking the time. We'll stay in touch, and I'll put numbers under the video as far as the governor, health department, environmental department, etc. And keep in touch. Brandy.
Thank you, Jordan, so much.